This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
I know there will be some people that try to argue that naps are no good. Normally I fall into that camp, but some days you'll just have those moments where your body shuts down entirely. You have no energy to expend. And you're like, you know what would be great right about now? If I close my eyes for 45 minutes and do a reset. I think everybody over the age of 50 can identify. So I'm somewhat rejuvenated here. Whatever that means for me. I'm prepping everything for the Monday show, so we are in the audio recording phase right now. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to another installment of the Five Starr Wrestling Report. They don't always come off like five-star reports. But I sure give it my all, brother. Every week. Twice a week. They'd be 6.5-star reviews if I did them in the Tokyo Dome. I know that's an old gag. I'm sorry. That joke has run its course for the last 7 years. Still, though, it's occasionally fun to break out. We are here to review some classic and modern wrestling. I think it was a good idea that I closed my eyes a little bit before sitting down to record this. Because now that I'm remembering these shows I'm about to review, good God, I'm already cranky just thinking about it. I thought I'm supposed to be excited as a wrestling fan this time of year. Right? Isn't WrestleMania supposed to be the biggest event all year? Maybe I'm the only one, but the more I think about WrestleMania XL, the less I'm enthused with the way they've gone about building anticipation for it. I'll talk about SmackDown in a little while. You'll probably understand why my excitement level's not all that high once we review that garbage television program. But, well, why don't we go ahead and start with some of the classic stuff. Retro Raw was a thing that happened. Now, they're in the middle of WrestleMania season right now. I'd argue they're doing a better job building WrestleMania 11 than they are building WrestleMania 40 right now. And the hype for WrestleMania 11 is pretty much all centered around celebrities and football players. So it's March of 1995. And on this very program, we had Vince McMahon joined at the commentary booth by none other than Steve Mongo McMichael. And about 6 months out from this very point, guess where that same man was? Working as the color guy for the competition. Wow. This business is quite crazy. I mean, it really put into perspective just how crazy the late 90s were. I mean, at the point we saw Mongo out there with Vince, I don't know how many people ever suspected that same guy would end up on the commentary desk for WCW less than a year later. Plus eventually being factored in as a horseman. getting to work with Flair, Double A, Benoit, probably a couple other names I'm neglecting to mention offhand. Oh, the things we forget about over time. It is all just a distant memory at this point. I did not neglect to remember just how rotten this program is, though. It's still a pile of shit. And I'm not just saying that because Henry O. Godwin was in the opener, taking on poor Razor. Speaking of guys that would wind up working for the competition less than a year later and being heavily pushed. Actually, I think it was a little over a year out from this point, but I mean, we're coming up on the tail end of Razor Ramon's run in WWF. Pretty soon he's going to be one of the more featured Mount Rushmore faces at the height of the Monday Night Wars. But here in 1995, he's wrestling a fucking pig farmer. He's also still working way too hard for the levels of fucks he should have reasonably given by this point. I did enjoy one moment during this snooze fest of a match. They took the time to plug the WWF hotline, wherein people could call in for $1.49 per minute to hear about Lawrence Taylor's WrestleMania preparation. Yes, you could pay $1.49 per minute to hear about LT's training. Boy howdy, I can only imagine the bank they made on that investment. So they're in there doing some generic lumbering big guy stuff for a while. And eventually, as Razor comes off the middle rope with a bulldog to Godwin, out comes Road Dogg to... I presume his intent was to cause a distraction. Razor turned his back momentarily to get blindsided by Godwin. And about 3 seconds after that, the 1-2-3 kid shows up and spin kicks Road Dogg in the face, which then distracted Godwin long enough so Razor could pick him up into a Razor's Edge and then pin him. That was how they came up with their finish. They said, I've got it. We'll do a distraction spot where the heel takes the babyface's attention away, and then we'll do the inverse, and we'll have the babyface distract the heel, and then we'll have the babyface win. God. It's almost too clever to be written down on a sheet of paper. The genius that oozes from that idea. And albeit it was the most exciting part of this 8-minute bore, I forgot that Double J and Razor were still feuding for the IC title. How or why the 1-2-3 kid fits into all this, I have no clue. But then again, there were plenty of things I called into question during this point with WWF. I mean, this was the least of our worries. I do remember that Razor and the Kid end up forming a tag team pretty soon, and they sort of ride that wave through most of 95. I just kind of forgot how haphazardly that team was put together. Sucks to be spark plug Bob Holly, right? Kid threw that guy under the bus pretty much. But staying on the subject of Razor and Jarrett for a minute, Razor did a quick ringside promo with Vince, where he ranted about getting screwed out of his rematch for the IC title. He's talking about the Bob Backlund incident from the other week, where he basically signed the open contract to get a title match, jumping ahead of the line supposedly. And that's not fair to Razor, because if Backlund were to win that match, then the IC title match would likely be part of the I Quit stipulation with Brett for WrestleMania. And that leaves Razor to twist in the wind with nothing to do. So he basically tells President Jack Tunney to fix it. Huh. And Razor Ramon is supposed to be a babyface. How exactly? He's just out here live bitching and moaning about getting screwed out of his title shots? All right, then. Yeah, that's a great thing for your protagonist to do. Complain about not getting what they want. That always goes over well with the TV audience. So once they re-aired the closing angle from last week with Backlund and Jarrett, we eventually go back to the ring for a King Kong Bundy squash. This is also where Steve McMichael joined Vince on commentary. Cornette was out there earlier, but he had to leave to go be the hype man for the Heavenly Bodies, since they were wrestling later on. I did note here, prior to this, they aired a clip of Bam Bam Bigelow beating up Doink the Clown in a post-match angle. I don't even remember what show that was. Might have been Superstars. But I noticed in the backdrop, you got all the members of the $1 Million Corporation, including Nikolai Volkov. I will give $100 to anybody that can name me the last time Nikolai was either seen or mentioned on this show. So, as expected, this is fucking appalling to watch. Bundy was borderline immobile by this point. It's actually visibly painful for me to watch him move around at a snail's pace. He's beyond out of shape, slower than he was at any other point in his career. And unfortunately, the commentary wasn't any better, so I couldn't even distract myself with the witty banter going on between the announcers. Now, Mongo would soon become his own personality on camera. Here in 1995, it wasn't there. He was abhorrently bad on commentary. Drier than a nun's cunt, to coin a once great phrase. Bundy eventually won with a running splash. It was more like a casual jog. But then we had all the post-match stuff, and that is what took this segment from a 0 to 100 in pretty rapid succession. Because after the bell sounds, we see Kama go over to confront Mongo at the commentary desk, basically getting in his face and telling him that if Mongo's got any guts, he'll stand up and fight like a man, quit running his yap and making a mockery of his profession. So as Mongo gets up and shoves Kama back, Kama grabs a cup of water, throws it in Mongo's face, and that's what kickstarts the brawl between the two at ringside. And it was indeed quite the scuffle. Looked pretty damn legit. McMichael wasn't much of a talker at this point, but he could still believably throw down. He looked like an ass-kicking machine. Never had a physique, but God, was that guy a believable fighter. It was great, too, because, he was so casual about everything once the refs pulled him back. He was standing there smiling, telling Kama that he'll see him at WrestleMania. Now imagine that. All of a sudden, I'm more intrigued to see this match than I am Bam Bam versus Lawrence Taylor. So with that in mind, guess which match they didn't have happen at WrestleMania? Yep. But it was a heck of an angle. It was about as real as you could work something like that on TV without making it look completely phony. Like they were actually pulling each other down and throwing fists. They weren't windmilling each other. Didn't look like a sloppy catfight. No, it was awesome. That was the best part of the whole show. And it all led to nothing. You know what part of the show I didn't love? The Todd Pettingill WrestleMania update. So you know what I did? I skipped it. It shaved off like 6 minutes right there. Which left me with the main event to talk about. For the WWF tag titles, new champions, the Smoking Guns, set to defend against the Heavenly Bodies. I mean, on this show, it was a 5-star classic. In actuality, it was probably just okay. Not to speak ill of Dr. Tom or Jimmy Del Rey. They look good. Billy and Bart looked green. But they tried their best. Everyone worked hard. Kept it about as simple as you could keep a match like this without getting too busy with all the false finishes and kickouts galore. That's the usual deal where the babyfaces are in control for a good chunk of it. We had the classic WWF commercial pitch where before we go to the break, the babyfaces are totally in control, and when they come back, somehow the heels have miraculously taken over, and we have no idea how. They're just getting the heat all of a sudden with no setup. But the Bodies worked over Bart for a while, and right as we get to the closing minute or two, Smoking Guns give Dr. Tom a backbreaker axe handle combo, but JC takes the official so Jimmy can sneak in and illegally take over for his team. And as he's working Billy over, he goes for a jackknife cover, but Billy bridges up and catches Jimmy with a backslide for the 3 count. So yes, he technically pinned the wrong man. I would argue it was more so a Heavenly Bodies plan backfiring on them, so they kind of got what they deserved. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, match wasn't bad. Not very exciting. I personally don't think the Smoking Guns were the best opponents to pair up with the Heavenly Bodies. Just, you know, two contrasting styles that didn't really mesh well together in the ring. But the Guns unsurprisingly retain. I mean, they're mainly just placeholder champions right now before we get to WrestleMania. And obviously, if you know what's coming down the pike with Owen and Yoko, I mean, you can kind of see what they're eventually setting up. In hindsight, I would probably argue it would probably have been a better idea to go with Owen and Yoko versus the Heavenly Bodies for the tag belts, but, well, you know, why would we want good match quality or anything like that? I mean, this is WrestleMania we're talking about, damn it. But I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm just bitching for the sake of bitching. Before we get to all that stuff, we have to get through Owen and Brett next week. The rubber match of sorts. And it is official. On Raw. Live. No holds barred. Owen versus Brett. The war to settle the score. I mean, I've alluded to this one several times during our recaps, but, yeah. This is, in fact, how they decided to blow off the Owen-Brett feud. After the 2 5-star classics we saw them have in '94, the blow-off, for free, on television, 1 week's build. Hard to imagine that one was entirely forgettable. Meanwhile, they're spending more time plugging a Lex Luger to Tonka cage match for another one of the live specials they're going to be running next Sunday. But at least we have Owen and Brett to look forward to next week. It'll be much more satisfying than watching the Smoking Guns bore me to tears. But, you know, other than that, I would say Raw was another mixed bag of good and bad this time. Still way too much filler on this show, and oh God, King Kong Bundy. Poor guy. It's just sad to watch him wrestle at this point. And the best part of the show this week was an angle involving two guys that, again, I don't believe they ever gave a payoff to. If they ever did Mongo versus Kama, please let me know, because I sure as hell don't remember it. But that was the tale of Raw this week. Still a few weeks out from WrestleMania. And yet another week goes by where Diesel and Shawn are barely even mentioned. God, that feud's been built up worse than Backlund versus Brett. At least Backlund's been on the show mentioning Brett by name. At least the announcers are talking about the I Quit stipulation. They have been mentioning Shawn and Diesel. It's been in one ear and out the other. Yet somehow, people remember this feud as being a huge deal at this point. I want to know what show they were watching. It definitely wasn't SmackDown they were watching, because this show's got plenty of problems on its own. Not the least of which was how they decided to open the show this week. They may have jumped the gun. At least partially. The second half saved it from being a total bust. But on the other hand, even as I reflect back on the first part of that Rock promo, as much as I hated it, it was still better than virtually everything else on the entire show. Which really goes to show the state of where we are with modern WWE product. The fact that god-awful Rock singing is still 10 times better than the majority of the crap they dish out on this show every week. Good God in heaven. Well, what do you say we get the first part of this fiasco out of the way? That way we can move on to talk about the good part of it. Once we got past all the sports entertainment bullshit. And I'm not going to spend the next 8 minutes setting this up. They were in Memphis. So Rock's talking about how he began his career in Memphis, wrestling at one of the local flea markets under a different name. He's a total babyface here. Not even trying to fight the crowd response. And because they're in Memphis, that means they're in the home of the blues. So Rocky's going to sing a song for the people. He's got a couple musicians off to stage left. His quote-unquote rhythm section, if you will. He had a guitar player and a harmonica soloist. And Rock basically spends the next 5 minutes roasting Cody and Seth in the form of a 12-bar blues. And the guy still can't sing worth a shit. But I guess the gag is that he's a heel. When he was Hollywood Rock 20-odd years ago, he was the same story. Like, he'd come out playing guitar, singing horribly, making sure to bury everybody, be it the hometown they were in or the guy he was currently feuding with at the time. But of course, he was a bad guy, so him not being able to sing well kind of made it work, I guess. The point is, different time, different era. They tried the experiment. It flopped back then. And it flopped here in 2024 just the same. In fact, I would argue it flopped even worse here because, at least when Rock was doing this shit 20 years ago, at least he got booed for it. These people were cheering him the whole time. He was still a babyface. He was sitting there making fun of Cody's previous Stardust gimmick, saying Seth Rollins' wife is more of a man than he is. Meanwhile, they show him on the big screen sitting next to Becky on a couch and fucking leopard print leggings. So he's not wrong. And then he calls out the Cody crybabies. Says they're a bunch of whiny, petulant bitches. Still gets a massive pop. And like the whole time this is going on, I just keep thinking, what exactly is this accomplishing? Is this supposed to generate heel heat on The Rock? Because if so, it's utterly failing. I mean, the whole thing was just completely ass backwards. And it went on for what seemingly felt like hours. So that part sucked. But the second part of the promo was what saved it. Because then Rock finally decided to get serious and start working like a goddamn heel. He shows the footage of what happened last week when Cody slapped The Rock, tried to embarrass him on nationwide TV. And then as Rock is building up the anticipation for Cody's response the following Monday night, we see the clip of him shedding tears on Raw, saying he's trying to win the belt for his mother because, she's the only person he has left in his life. So Rock is making fun of Cody for crying. But this is where everything turned around. Because then Rock explains that he's done talking to Cody. Right now he wants to address Mama Rhodes. And as Rock starts talking in a really hushed, stern tone, basically says that after he and Roman get through demolishing Cody and Seth on night one, then Rock is going to give Cody the beating of a lifetime on night two. He's going to take his Brahma bull rope. He's going to give Cody a few whippings. He's going to smear Cody's blood all over that strap. Then after Roman pins his shoulders down, Rock's going to take that strap, hand deliver it to Mama Rhodes in the front row, and then he's going to whisper in her ear, "What can I say except you're welcome?" Then we get his really sinister, demented laugh to cap it off. And that part, I thought that part was great. That was the most heelish thing I've seen Rock do since the turn weeks back. No, he sounded like a genuine, authentic serial killer. God, if they removed all that garbage with Rock singing earlier, just condensed it down to the second part of the promo segment, probably would have been the best thing Rock's done since his return. And look, that's my personal take on the blues section of the promo. Some people probably enjoyed it. For the people that liked The Rock being over the top, you probably found plenty of entertainment value out of it. Good on you if you did. I thought it was stupid and counterproductive. Did nothing to generate heel heat on the bloodline. Did nothing to rally people behind Cody or Seth. I mean, all it did was expose the reality of bad creative from a previous regime. In the case of Cody, and in the case of Seth, continue to ascertain that the guy's a walking parody. He looks like an idiot. He dresses like an idiot. He talks like an idiot. He acts like an idiot. I mean, there's literally nothing genuine about that guy. But again, I mean, if you're captivated by Rock's material, if you like the over-the-top personality, well, of course you probably liked it. For my money, I thought it was just hokey and a complete waste of time. Other than The Rock trying to find ways to amuse himself and milk the company dry for all the money in the world. And in that case, he's a brilliant politician. But at least that didn't drag on for 45 minutes. Although in hindsight, I kind of wish they would have expanded it longer if it meant I didn't have to watch more of the same shit they've been doing with the LWO. It's so predictable at this point. Do these guys wrestle anybody else aside from the same combination of people associated with Legado del Fantasma? Good fucking Lord. How many times do we have to see this exact same match? And I'm not kidding you. I had to rewind this on my DVR to catch what the hell the stipulation was for this match. I was so confused when I first heard it. It is a WrestleMania Tag Team Championship qualifying match. Yes. Apparently this was a qualifier against one team, so that whichever team wins this match, they will then get the opportunity to go to WrestleMania to challenge for the tag team championships against not one team, not two teams, not three teams, not four teams, but 5 motherfucking goddamn tag teams. Oh, and you want to know the best part? Not only is it a 6-pack challenge match for the undisputed tag belts, it is a ladder match. Yeah. You heard that right. A 6-pack tag team championship ladder match with 12 guys who are going to do nothing but a bunch of car wreck spots for 15 plus minutes. That's the selling point. Why are they having a 6-pack tag team championship ladder match at WrestleMania? Beats me. I have no idea what prompted this random stipulation. Who knows? But I can tell you what match I'm already skipping. I mean, they may as well just advertise that as, we got too many people on our fucking roster, so here, lazy excuse to shoehorn people onto the card. I mean, next thing you know, they'll be booking a 30-man gauntlet for the 24/7 title. If that's even still a thing at this point, who even knows? God, dude. You can't make this shit up if you tried. Booking a qualifying match against one team so that the winners can go on to challenge 5 other teams later on. What a bunch of morons. So after the Legado guys won, I then wrote down, if I'm Angel or Humberto in this case, I'm going straight to management to protest the absurdity of the stipulation match. What rational-minded tag team is going to want to qualify for this fucking ladder match? I mean, if it's not a fair one-on-one match for a title after winning a qualifier, why would you want anything to do with those belts? Throw them in the dumpster for all I care. Tell me, okay, you get one qualifying match, and if you win, you then get to wrestle 5 other teams later on. In a garbage plunder match, no less. With ladders. Probably tables. Because let's be honest, what's a ladder match in 2024? You know they're going to use tables. That's all the fucking marks are going to cheer for the whole time. Especially in Philly. Lick my dirty butthole. That's my response. So eventually I came back in the room and I heard LA Knight's music hit. Made even better by Wade Barrett completely marking out for him on commentary. But I am glad I stuck around for it. Because it was a damn good promo. And Knight's here talking about how he searched high and low for AJ Styles, but he's nowhere to be found. Funny how AJ would go through all the trouble to purchase a plane ticket to ride all the way across the world to Australia, literally just to fuck LA Knight out of a world title shot. Yet he can't muster up the gonads to drive from Gainesville to Memphis just to look LA Knight eye to eye. What a coward. But LA Knight's got the solution. AJ likes to claim that X marks the spot, and LA Knight's the X. But it's LA Knight that spots the marks, brother. And there's no bigger mark than AJ Styles. That was a good line. So he then issues the challenge for AJ for WrestleMania, an offer he cannot refuse. So naturally, who should show up from behind with the chair? AJ gives LA Knight the shot right to the back, puts the chair over his throat to accept the challenge, and it was fine. Now, I've talked about it before. I always like those grudge match feuds between top guys where you don't have any belts at stake. There's no titles, no gimmicks. Just two guys with big egos and a score to settle. Find out who the better man is. Yeah, I think WrestleMania cards in particular benefit when they have at least one of these kinds of matches, especially with the top stars. And I think the heel-face dynamic works here. Both guys are great workers by their own right. Despite the hideous booking, and the people are still behind LA Knight as a babyface. So yeah, I'm down for it. It's not how I thought they were going to initially use LA Knight for WrestleMania. But, at least they're not keeping him off the card entirely. We've seen these guys touch already, but it hasn't been too frequent to the point where it's totally ruined the mystique of getting an actual payoff. They've had, I think, one televised singles match that resulted in a DQ. Obviously they were in that four-way at the Rumble for Roman's title. But, we really haven't seen one guy get over on the other yet, so yeah, I'm good with this. No issues here. And on the subject of what I thought the initial plan for LA Knight at WrestleMania was going to be, that being a U.S. title shot against Logan Paul, well, then Randy Orton got involved. Because that's how top guys do business. Orton caught wind that Knight was getting a title shot and said, "Yeah, that doesn't work for me, brother." So, change of plans. We had a deal where Logan Paul talked with Nick Aldis and said he wanted an apology issued from Orton for, I don't really know why. I guess RKOing his buddy the other week and dumping a Prime Energy drink on him. So Aldis told Logan to do it in person, which took us to Grayson Fodder versus Randy Orton. At least they're still staying true to Grayson's gimmick, being used as job fodder to get over the more important stuff on the show. At least it wasn't Theory this time. So Orton eventually won with the RKO. And then after Theory jumped in to try to restrain him so Logan could hit him with the knockout punch, outruns Kevin Owens in his pink tennis shoes to make the save. He also plowed over Grayson in the aisleway, which was moderately funny. And that was all well and good, right up until the point where Theory completely exposed the business and took a stunner into an RKO, which looked phony in just about every conceivable way. In fact, it was so ungodly phony, it actually made me laugh out loud and scream to myself, why the fuck do I still watch this bullshit? So absurd. What an idiot. What an honest-to-God tool. That was legitimately worse than anything I can recall on AEW television in the last 2 years. Yeah. Maybe that's not entirely true. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I mean, I've seen some pretty stupid shit over there. But then they really got to me here. I could overlook Austin Theory being an idiot. I at least got a mild laugh out of that. This one pissed me off. So remember when I said, I really hope they don't make this a three-way by shoehorning Kevin Owens into the match? Well, lo and behold, they're shoehorning Kevin Owens into the match. Literally just to spite me, it would seem. So yeah, on the same program where they just announced a six-pack challenge ladder match, we are also now getting a three-way with Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and Logan Paul for the U.S. title. Two multi-mans, back-to-back. Glorious. And indeed, it is a working three-way where you have two baby faces and one heel. What essentially creates a handicap stipulation where the heel is at the numbers disadvantage. But I'm sure they'll work their WWE magic by having the two idiot baby faces cause dissension, which will give Logan an even playing field somewhat. Because, you know, dumb baby faces that can't get along. Yeah, that always goes over well. So that all sucked. Could have just kept it simple. It was right there on paper. Randy Orton, Logan Paul, a one-on-one title match. Like it used to be done back in the good old days. Before multi-mans became the status quo. And again, it's just like, why is it a three-way? Just more of an excuse to get more bodies on the card when they're not needed. Like, seriously, let's remove the sarcasm here and let's just have an honest conversation about it. I have nothing against Kevin Owens, but if he was left off the WrestleMania card, would it affect that show one iota? The answer is no. It wouldn't. And it's particularly stupid in this case because, again, the entire program has been centered around Randy Orton versus Logan Paul. That was the lasting image we got at the Elimination Chamber when Logan hit Orton with the brass knucks and cost him the match. Kevin Owens wasn't even factored into that equation. But because he's been lingering around in the background helping Orton fight off Theory and fodder for weeks, yeah, of course he was going to get wedged into the match. For no reason. So they fucked up a potential money match. Now it's just another three-way for the sake of doing another three-way. Fuck. You know, why do I even bother caring at this point? So then Dragon Lee wrestled Santos Escobar. Less than 30 seconds after the opening bell, Dragon Lee had already done a flipping senton out to the floor to take out Escobar. And then less than 15 seconds after that spot, they were already back in the ring doing more choreographed lucha. And after basically kicking Escobar's ass for 2 minutes straight, and Dragon Lee basically working this match like a 150-pound Power Ranger, he then cuts off the two heel lackeys on the floor, and then immediately slides back in, and gets pinned with a Phantom Driver. You may as well just tattoo the word jobber across your forehead. Well, actually, that wouldn't be visible because Dragon Lee wears a mask, so no one would see it. Maybe he'd prefer it that way. Yeah, this is a waste of time. And the guy they're trying to push is getting his ass kicked for 2 minutes, only to win with his finish because of a distraction spot on the floor against a guy with a 247 win-loss record. Modern WWE booking for you. Then we had another one of those tag team qualifiers with the winners getting to potentially challenge in that 6-way clusterfuck ladder match. And as soon as they even teased me with the idea that Pretty Dreadly were going to be a part of that, I said, oh, hell fucking no. I will pass there. They wrestled, I forget who they wrestled. Bait and Switch. Well and Done. Whatever their team name is. I think they won. Who cares? And then we arrived at the main event. Bayley versus Dakota Kai. No, I'm not ribbing. That was legitimately the TV main event. Bayley versus Dakota Kai. The standards have quite massively fallen off in 2024, haven't they? Well, for 8 minutes, it was certainly a match. 5 if you take out the commercial break. Because, of course, an 8-minute TV match, they still had to break it up with a commercial. I mean, I wish I had anything remotely interesting to say about it, but I mean, it really was nothing all that remarkable. Bayley kicked the shit out of Dakota for a while. Dakota got like 2 minutes to work over Bayley while the heel stood on the floor being relatively useless. Then Bayley started to make her comeback. And then all the heels hit the ring for the DQ. And while they ganged up on her, out runs Naomi's green hair to try to make the save. But she got her ass kicked. And then with about 15 seconds left of airtime, the heels all picked up Bayley by her arms and legs to hold her in position so Io could come off and give Bayley a moonsault press, where she proceeded to land right on her fucking face. Just creamed the shit out of her. Probably gave her a concussion. Like Bayley's there laying, covering up her face. Selling it like somebody just mashed her face in with a hot iron. I'm like, what are we doing? Are we trying to kill people on this show? Is that the objective? Just one reckless spot after another, dude. It's all I see on these modern wrestling shows anymore. People doing all these stupid high-risk spots. Everybody's getting hurt left and right. People are put in these really perilous situations where, I mean, they're never really able to fully protect themselves. And the end result is either them or their opponent getting hurt. I'm like, I mean, here's the ironic part, too. We had less than 30 seconds of remaining airtime, and they still nearly crippled Bayley before the cameras faded to black. I don't know, dude. I really don't. I'm mesmerized by the amount of horror shit I see on this show most weeks. And again, I remind you, this was their main event. This is how they decided to end the show. A sloppy 8-minute girls match that nearly ended in tragedy with a girl getting her head caved in. What more could you ask for? Aside from professionalism and good quality TV. I guess the bar really is that low. We are technically right in the middle of go mode for WrestleMania. They're closing out one of their primetime wrestling shows with an underneath girls match. No wonder nobody watches this shit anymore. I don't know how you could stomach half of it. And all the matches this week were entirely meaningless. The biggest star that worked the show was Randy Orton. And he was stuck having to carry Grayson fodder. But what's the incentive to care about anything else? Just to watch a bunch of guys do spots? Fuck that noise. If I wanted that, I would just watch AEW. They got plenty of no-names that do spots over there. I thought WWE was supposed to be the big leagues. Apparently, I'm still living in the mindset that they're actually trying. And this whole show is just mind-boggling this week. It's really all I can say. Somebody formatted this program, and they thought it was a good idea. That's the amazing part. And we had 4 great minutes of The Rock on the stick. 2 good minutes of LA Knight on the stick. The rest of it was just the usual blasé WWE television. Biggest WrestleMania of all time, huh? Yeah, I'll bet. So as we jump into NXT for the week, we're diving right into the ring action from the beginning. It's the hype man himself, Mojo Rawley, running around ringside like a college kid coked out of his fucking mind. Shaky cameras galore. God, we were 15 seconds in and I was all ready to vomit. I did laugh at the Ron Gronkowski sighting in the crowd. Yeah. Remember when they tried that experiment like 6 years later? What happened to that? Went over like a fart in the wind. And nobody talks about it. So the match is Mojo Rawley versus Bull Dempsey. They called Bull the last of a dying breed. What? A fat, out-of-shape American guy from New York? Isn't that like 70% of the American population? Minus being from New York, I guess. So Mojo did a few football poses. A couple stiff shoulder tackles into the corner. Big running splash. And then he hit a hip attack followed by a seated splash for the 3 count. And Bull Dempsey was still pale, fat, and unkempt when it was over. And Mojo's still hyped. But we're far from done with the subject matter of bad gimmicks. They were up and down the card this week. Guess who's back to cut some greeny weeny promos? You guessed it. Our good pal C.J. Parker. He's finally stepped out of the greenhouse to grace us with his presence this week. And he is here to... Well, it's always hard to figure out what the fuck Parker's saying in his promos. But he basically called Mojo a genetic mutation. Said he's the kind of guy that eats fast food and then throws the wrapper out the window. Did CJ just miss the fact that Mojo was in the ring with Bull Dempsey? Who's the one that delves a little too much into the fast food? Anyway, well, then he closed his promo with this exact line. No, I'm not making this quote up. He goes, next week, I'm going to humanely dispose of Mojo Rawley. And then he picked up a recycle bin and he dropped a crumpled up piece of paper into it. This gimmick is death TV, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to understate that enough. It's incredibly stupid. It's basically a parody of a parody at this point. It's like they're trying so hard to openly mock environmentalists. But the issue is that it's not funny in the slightest. It's just dumb and ineffective. Speaking of dumb and ineffective, Tyler Breeze. Never really thought about him much until now, but yeah, this pretty boy gimmick, it's not good. The selfie stick was an interesting idea. If only those things were around during the height of the Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff era. That would have been a treasure. But yeah, I can't with this Tyler Breeze thing. It's almost as bad as the Suspect Sissies on SmackDown. Or whatever their names are. The two UK guys with a feminine attire. I can never remember their names. Pretty Dreadly. Is that it? Or is that my made-up term for them? Well, either way, they all suck. But their gimmick in relation to Breeze's gimmick, it's on that same level of suck. Luckily, we didn't have to endure much of it this week. It was supposed to be Breeze versus Sami Zayn, but right as Zayn was coming down the ramp, Corey Graves ran in from behind and threw him into the ring post, with Zayn coming nowhere close to actually cracking his head off the post. But he still had to sell it like he just got concussed. And, they had the doctors down there to flash the light in his eyes, try to treat it like a serious angle. So, of course, right as they help him to the back, in what's supposed to be a really somber moment, well, we cut to the back for good old smiley Sheamus. He walks into the shot. He's happy as a clam. Hi, Devin. How you doing? Wonderful weather we're having, isn't it? All the while, a man was just concussed. Gotta love WWE show formatting. It's about as ludicrous as Tony Khan's booking. So Sheamus is asked the superb interview question, how does it feel to be in NXT? A never-before thought-of question that only a brilliant mind could conceive of. And right as Sheamus is about to share his life story of coming through the NXT system, who should walk in to interrupt with his god-awful singing but Aiden English? Yeah, he's still around. And you know what I did? I hit the fast forward button. Couldn't do it. As soon as the voice hit, I was like, nope, not doing it. Although I did catch the part where Sheamus explains that he's going to meet with JBL to see that a match between them gets signed for later on in the program. And approximately 4 seconds after these words cross Sheamus's mouth, they have already created a graphic to plug Aiden English versus Sheamus for later on. So either Sheamus had magically teleported in a time machine to get that match signed, or these people are idiots and didn't take formatting into account when piecing the show together. I'm thinking it's more likely that Sheamus is a time traveler. You know, those Irish, they're a wild bunch. So the compilation of more bad gimmicks continue on the show. We go from one incredibly effeminate man wearing fur raincoats and carrying a selfie stick to another incredibly effeminate man who prances down to the ring with a lollipop in his mouth. Again, I have to ask, as a mid-30s adult male watching this product, who the fuck is the targeted audience for this bullshit? Apparently not me. So it's Adam Rose versus Camacho. Camacho's face told the whole story. It simply read, "What the fuck am I doing wrestling in this godforsaken company right now?" I mean, this guy could not have left for Japan any faster. Him and Juice Robinson both. We also had more very unsettling flirting going on between Renee Paquette and William Regal. I will not go too into depth with the horrors that ensued there, but there seems to be a running theme between these two on television from week to week. It's very uncomfortable. And while getting into semantics of whether or not Rose was skipping or prancing around the ring, I was contemplating whether or not I need to turn the show off in complete disgust. But I powered through it. I enjoyed it when Camacho was getting the heat. I don't think that was the intent. But eventually Rose made a comeback, and right as he was setting up Camacho for the running lariat, Renee referred to the setup as, and I quote, erotic. So confirmed. Renee was calling this match while on her cycle. That's what I got out of it. Renee fawns over Adam Rose, and this gimmick is asshole. My two big takeaways. He does have a pretty good AA spine buster. I'll give him that. And then following more infomercial plugs for WrestleMania, we had a Divas match with Sasha Banks and Bayley. No, it was not the Iron Man match I had like a year later that wound up being arguably one of the better women's matches in modern history. No, this was a very forgettable TV match that everybody forgot about the moment the bell rang. It is very timely seeing Sasha here, though. Seeing as how she just made her, quote, impactful AEW debut this past Wednesday. Whether or not it affects the ratings in any significant manner long term, well, that remains to be seen. I think the bigger question is whether or not it changes the landscape of the state of the girls division over there. I mean, judging how Tony's already signed like every former WWE female he could possibly get his hands on, none of whom have made a damn bit of difference in that company. I don't foresee Mercedes drawing 15 cents in Chinese money. But maybe that's just the skeptic in me talking. I also don't really give a fuck because it's AEW, but, I figured I would just chime in and share my thoughts since we're already talking about her here. She is sort of the center of the news headlines at the moment. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of hair pulling, a lot of horseplay going on in this match that kind of took me out of it almost entirely. Sasha's offense looks beyond atrocious. Her catfight spots are ridiculous. I mean, she has the body of a fucking 14-year-old. Absolutely no muscle definition at all. I'm sorry. I don't get it. I never did. I just don't understand what the hype is about this chick. I get she's closely linked with girls like Becky and Bayley and Charlotte. That original core group of women that they brought up to the main roster, and people sort of took to them as the building block foundation of the Divas Revolution. All right, whatever, fine. Just, if you want to make that argument, okay. But I just don't see what other people see in her. For years, people have raved about how much of a star she is. She looks like a teenager. She wrestles like she's straight out of Glow. And her screeching harpy voice is beyond turn the channel heat. I just can't get into her matches, dude. They're so bad. So Bayley won with a bridging roll-up after a bunch of outside interference. I can at least understand the appeal of a Bayley character because, I mean, at least she doesn't screech like a dying fawn on the side of the road. I guess it was designed to keep Bayley as a focal point of the show, even though Charlotte's the one that's getting the title match with Paige. And the thing with her and Natty kind of went under the radar for a while, but the people seem to dig them together. So I'm okay with that. It's funny because I think they are still building up Charlotte for that title match. But she was sort of an afterthought in all this. It was weird just kind of seeing her out there as a body. But again, they're grooming her for a title match down the road, so even though I wasn't a proponent of it, at least they're going about it the right way. I guess it was a better option to go with an Emma. So then we had the main event. It is Aiden English versus Sheamus with about 10 minutes build. What was supposed to be a pro wrestling match took about a year and a half to get to that point because it's WWE. So we need more of that sports entertainment mixed in. So for the first half of the segment, we had to hear a bunch of scripted banter between both men, with Sheamus mocking the idea that Aiden was ever going to make it in Hollywood. And then he asked the people directly if he could sing an Irish tune. To which, in the best moment of the entire show, half the audience started chanting, "No." So eventually Aiden knees Sheamus in the back, knocks him out to the floor. That basically kickstarted the match after like 5 minutes of nothing went by. This is where I noted, I never had anything against Sheamus. I was always kind of a fan. Nice guy, good worker, good promo, really passionate about the business, obviously. God, was he a bland fucking babyface. It's like the worst possible kind of babyface to be. That Vince McMahon, white meat, corporate, smiling, nice guy babyface. And I remember they tried to make Sheamus like that for years. Oh, so bad. So once they rang the bell to finally start it, they wrestle for about 2 minutes before they go to commercial. Because obviously that pesky wrestling was getting in the way of things. Yeah, no one wanted to see any of that. So they come back where both men are seen fighting on the floor for almost an entire minute. Somehow this did not result in a double count out. Aiden kept working over Sheamus for the heat. This was the point where Regal informed us that he had a man crush on Aiden. Okay, seriously. Is every fucking dude on the show homosexual? Where are the men? Obviously not watching. The entire demographic we're appealing to is women and gay men. God damn it. Pro wrestling, it is not the same as it used to be. So after Aiden had Sheamus in a sleeper hold for about 45 minutes, Sheamus eventually fought back, mustered up a bit of offense, and then he set up Aiden for the bro kick, hit him point blank, got the pin. So at least the right guy won. At least that was my selfish opinion on the matter. The match, I would say, was mostly okay. I mean, once they got past all the bullshit song parody stuff. I don't really know if Aiden had the best showing here because, I mean, he really didn't do a whole lot to stand out. Yeah, he got to work with a big name from the main roster, and it wasn't a total one-sided beatdown, but I mean, 90% of what he did was just putting Sheamus in a stationary sleeper. Kind of expected a little more than what we got. But it was cool to have him down there as a one-off appearance. Crowd liked Sheamus. Obviously, he was a babyface here in NXT. Don't remember if that was the thing that translated on the main roster. He didn't really seem to have any standout heelish qualities here about his look. So I have to assume he was still babyface on the main roster at the time. But I mentioned before how I always think it's kind of cool when they bring top guys down from the main roster and give them a chance to work with the developmental talent. You know, a lot of the time the developmental guys end up doing the job. But that's to be expected with a lot of the bigger names. If it's Xavier Woods, it's a different story entirely. Or any middle-of-the-road guy that could have eaten a pin and really wouldn't have mattered all that much. But yeah, NXT was another kind of grab bag show this week. Tried to seek out the entertainment value where I could get it. But it was a hard trudge. I mean, the story of the show continues to be concerted efforts at building new stars. But there are so many horrible gimmicks along the way. I mean, I can appreciate the attempt to create new stars, but when you link those with WWF circa 1980 to 1990 cartoon personalities, like that shit ain't gonna stick, dude. And everybody knew that 99% of these gimmicks were eventually gonna tank. But come on now. Did you honestly think Tyler Breeze was gonna flourish on the main roster? Or Adam Rose? Or Aiden English? Get the fuck out of here, dude. Those gimmicks were doomed to fail since day one. CJ Parker, same thing. It's all just one lame gimmick after another. And like, that's not even me roasting the people that are working the gimmicks. Because you've heard me talk about it before. I was a huge advocate of Juice Robinson in AEW. You know, until he disappeared into the ether, never to be seen again. But God, his WWE run? Of course it was never going to work out. We all knew that. You know, it's a tough boat to be in because on the one hand, you have to admire their attempts at actually trying to use the developmental system to build new names. God. Could you go about it any worse way? Trying to rip off these fucking mid-90s cartoon gimmicks in an era where the fans are mostly hardcores to begin with? I mean, some of them would eat shit stew and like the taste of it. But for all the rational-minded thinkers out there, come on now. But that's where we are right now in the black and gold era of NXT. Still trying to find their footing, but, yeah. They're giving it the old college try. Much like I am, as we're delving into all these classic and modern wrestling reviews. Still doing this for 3 years now. The passion's still there. I'm holding on for dear life, but we're getting through it. And we're only a couple weeks out from WrestleMania, brother. The most exciting time of the year, or allegedly how wrestling fans are supposed to feel. But as we wrap up the show for the week, when we get to Friday, it'll be a special NWA Crockett review. Actually, I lied. No, that's 2 weeks out. No, we still have one more week of the regular Friday review, and then the week afterwards will be the Clash of Champions. And then we also have the WrestleMania 40 Nights 1 and Night 2 shows coming down the pike. I'm kind of pre-planning what I'm going to do for the Monday show there. Provided those reviews take reasonable lengths of time, I might factor in a Retro Raw or a Retro NXT report, but do not expect those podcasts to be 3 freaking hours, because it ain't happening. Thanks everybody for watching this one, and we'll catch you on Friday. Take care. Peace out.